Good evening, and welcome to the September 13th, 2021 fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate and fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget public hearing. Can we do anything about the echo? Can we do anything about the echo? To 2001 North 14th Street, Tampa, Florida, while some of the board members and others are participating virtually. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And so we'll take attendance with a roll call.
Director Castor. Director Fraser.
Present.
Director Hudson.
Here.
Director Johnson.
Here.
Director Kemp. Director Knight.
Here.
Director Myers.
Here.
Director Oberman.
Here.
Director Schisler.
Here.
Chair Smith.
Here.
Director Vieira. Director Williams. Madam Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. And so at this time, we open the public hearing this evening on the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate and fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget for the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority. Anyone who wishes to speak this evening would have signed in, but I'm informed that we have no public comment tonight. So, online, we have the documents that summarize the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate and fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget. And these documents include the agenda for tonight's public hearing. We will be considering the adoption of the following resolutions. The first one is 2021-0937, and that is adopting the fiscal year 2022 millage rate of 0.5, which is more than the rolled back rate of 0.4727 mils by 5.78%, and providing for an effective date. And the other resolution will be 2021-0938, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2022 annual budget of $168,681,326 and providing for an effective date for that. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. Our staff will present the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate. HART staff will then present an overview of the fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget. And the board will then open the floor for citizen comments regarding only one or the other. And after that, the board would take action to move for approval of any necessary changes. So the two resolutions will be presented to the board for approval, and our CEO, Ms. LeGrand, will now present the first one, the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate item. Ms. LeGrand. Good evening.
Good evening. We will have staff now present the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate. Ms. Joanne Caceres will do the presentation on behalf of the staff.
We need the first presentation, please. Thank you. So good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, and the public. Today I will present on the fiscal year 2022 tentative tax millage rate. Next slide, please. Thank you. I will briefly cover an overview of the historical millage rate and ad valorem tax revenues. Finally, the next steps for review and adoption of the final fiscal year 22 millage rate and fiscal year 22 annual budget. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this chart provides a 7-year comparable of the millage rate and ad valorem tax revenues from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2022. The tentative fiscal year 22 millage rate is 0.50 of a mill, which is the same as the prior years presented. For fiscal year 22, the tentative ad valorem revenues is budgeted at $56.9 million, which is $4.2 million or 8.1% more than the fiscal year 21 budget. Next slide, please. So the next steps with regards to the millage rate, after this evening's public hearings on the tentative fiscal year 22 millage rate and annual budget, we expect to go to the board for the approval of the final fiscal year 22 millage rate and the fiscal year 22 annual budget. The next public hearing is scheduled for September 27th at 5:30 p.m. That will, with this, I conclude my presentation on the millage. Do you have any questions or comments?
Let's try that. All right, seeing none. I see no hands raised virtually either. Then we will have the second presentation on the tentative annual budget.
The fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget is $168,681,326, which represents an increase of 9% from the amended fiscal year 2021 annual budget of $154,748,905. The fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget consists of the following components: tentative operating budget of $105,635,020, and a tentative capital budget of $63,048,306. The total tentative annual budget is $168,681,326. In the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate and tentative annual budget were discussed with the Board and Finance and Audit Committee during the meetings held June through August of 2021. The fiscal year 2022 tentative not to exceed millage rate was certified at the July 19, 2021 board meeting and provided to the property appraiser on July 30, 2021 in conformance with the state law. Now, staff will make the presentation on the fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget.
Thank you. And once again, good evening to Madam Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, and the public. So today, I will present an overview of the fiscal year '22 tentative HART budget. This budget has previously been presented to the Finance and Audit Committee and the HART Board of Directors. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will briefly cover an overview of the operating statistics, the staffing level, operating revenues and expenses, capital revenues and expenditures, capital project list, the combined annual budget, and finally, the next steps for review and adoption of the fiscal year '22 budget. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the operating budget supports service levels for the three major transportation modes that HART provides. These services are fixed route, paratransit, and streetcar. For fiscal year '22, HART projects a total of 9.3 million revenue miles, 668,000 revenue hours, and ridership of 8.7 million. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the budget includes 836.5 full-time equivalent positions. The majority of the jobs HART offers are bargaining positions. We are budgeting for 628 amalgamated transit union positions. These are primarily the bus operators and represent 75% of the total workforce. 55 full-time equivalent positions are Teamsters positions, which are primarily operating supervisors. The tentative budget also includes 153 non-bargaining positions, which are operating and non-operating administrative positions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So HART develops a balanced budget every year. And for fiscal year '22, we are projecting $105 million in operating revenues and $105 million in expenses. This is a chart of total operating revenues by source and the percent that they represent. The primary source of revenues for fiscal year '22 is from ad valorem, projected at $55.9 million, or 53% of the total budget. The federal operating grants include $15.7 million in federal relief funds provided by the Federal Transit Administration, and these relief funds are known as the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, or CARISA, and other annual federal operating grants projected at $12.3 million. These two revenues combined represent 20% of the total budget. The state operating grants and local contributions are projected at $10.8 million and combined are at 10% of the total budget. These revenues includes grants from the Florida Department of Transportation and local match contributions from the Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, private partners, and private partners. The passenger fares, projected at $8 million, represent 8% of the total budget. The HART budget does not include an increase in the passenger fares, and all other revenues represent a 2% of the total budget. Next slide, please. So the total operating expenses of $105 million are presented by expense category and the percent that these costs represent. The primary expenses are salaries and wages and are projected at $51.8 million, or 49% of the total budget. Fringe benefits are $21.2 million, or 20% of the budget. And the total salaries, wages, and all fringe benefits is $73 million, or 70% of the total budget. All other expenses represented 30% of the total budget. Thank you. So the tentative capital budget is $63 million. HART categorizes the capital revenues by revenue source. And on this chart are revenues and the percent that they represent. The primary source of capital revenue is from federal capital grants, projected at $39 million, or 69% of the total capital budget. Next slide, please. So these are capital expenditures by project categories. We project to use the majority of our funding for rolling stock and maintenance, projected at $23.2 million, or 37% of the total budget. $16.3 million, or 26% in facilities and construction. $11.4 million, or 18% in technology. And $3.5 million, or 6% in bus stops and shelters. $3 million, or 5% in planning and studies, and 8% on all other expenses, expense categories listed. On the next 4 slides is the tentative list of capital projects for each category that is included in the summary that was just presented. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide lists the rolling stock and maintenance. Again, we anticipate spending $23 million for rolling stock and maintenance. The majority of the funds, $13.5 million, is projected to be spent on compressed natural gas buses, and $5.4 million on 4 electric buses. Next slide, please. Sorry. So these are projects included in the categories of facilities and construction. Our major construction project is the reconstruction or renovation of our heavy maintenance building located at 21st Avenue, which is budgeted at $9.7 million. Next slide, please. So our plan is to spend $11.4 million in the category of technology, $3.5 in bus stops and shelters, and $3 million in planning and studies. Next slide, please. Oh, you did. Okay, thank you. So this slide lists the projects in the categories of safety and security, which is $2.3 million, $1.7 million in maintenance and equipment, $700,000 in non-revenue vehicles, and $575,000 as a small reserve for contingencies. Next slide, please. Thank you. To summarize, the tentative fiscal year 2022 operating budget is $105 million. The capital budget is $63 million, and for a total combined tentative fiscal year 22 budget of $168,681,000. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned in the previous presentation, the next steps would be to hold a second and final public hearing, which is scheduled for September 27th. And there we would request from the board to review and consider for adoption the final fiscal year 22 millage rate and the fiscal year 22 annual budget. Next slide, please. So this concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what you heard this evening were 2 presentations from Joanne Casares. The last presentation was on our fiscal year 2022 tentative millage, tentative annual budget, which is $168,681,326. In addition, we heard a presentation previously by Ms. Casares on our fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate, and our fiscal, as I mentioned, fiscal 22 tentative annual budget. So there were two presentations, for the record. One was the tentative millage rate, and the other one was the tentative annual budget for fiscal year 2022. This is our first required public hearing to cover both of these items. Notification of this hearing was included on the Truth in Millage, also called the TRIM notices, mailed to all taxpayers in Hillsborough County, the City of Tampa, and the City of Temple Terrace. The fiscal year 2022 tentative millage of 0.5 mils is the same as the adopted fiscal year 2021 millage rate of 0.5 mils, and the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate is 5.78% more than the rollback rate of 0.4727 mils. With that, that concludes our presentation on both of these items this evening. Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and so I'll just, for the record, ask one last time if there's any public comment. And there is not, and seeing none, I'll ask for, let's see, Councilman Schisler, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if this is the appropriate time for a comment, or do we need a motion to be made before a comment can be made? I wasn't sure when to raise my hand on that.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
I have a comment that I'd like to make about the budget, not the tentative resolution, not the millage rate, but the budget itself. Is this an appropriate time, or do I need to wait until the motion has been made before I make a comment?
This is the appropriate time, because after this comes the approval of the action items in light of board discussion. I know, I'm having a hard time hearing you as well. This is the appropriate time for board discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only comment is well, a couple comments. First of all, thank you very much to staff and to administration. Very good. This is a difficult document to put together each and every year, and then to bring it forward. Good job. I think it's effective, and it does what we need to do and moves us forward. But I do have a word of caution to my fellow board members, and that is our reserves. This budget has no reserve funding in it. So in other words, we're at $15 million, give or take, which we're only there by the grace of COVID relief monies from the feds. So, and that was 29 million. So you see where we would be if that hadn't happened. My caution is we have to be careful. There's no other backstops coming forward that we're aware of. So it could be a critical situation here, and we have the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that it gets taken care of. So we need to be aware that there's no reserves funding, if you will, built into this. My only question was, and I don't know how to really ask this, if we budget revenues at 95% of our ad valorem receipts, okay, can't do it any more than that. But if we go below 95%, then we'll dip into reserves to get that money, to make up the difference, theoretically. So my concern is, and my hope would be that if we go above the 95%, we could throw that back into reserves and not spend it on other stuff. That's my main comment, that if we do better than the 95% collections, that we make a concerted effort to designate that to reserve so that we have a rainy day fund that could hit and may well hit. That's my only comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other board members with comments or questions? Seeing none, we can move to the approval of the action items. And so at this point, I'll read the resolutions. And do we vote on these one at a time? Yes. So first of all, the resolution 2021-0937, a resolution of the Hillsborough Transit Authority of Hillsborough County, Florida, adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem taxes, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2022 millage rate of 0.5, which is more than the rolled back rate of 0.4727 mils by 5.78% and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve.
It says here we'll read them both, but let's start with just the first one, since that's the one we're going to vote on.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by, it's very hard for me to hear with the echo in the room, Councilman Schisler, and a second by Director Hudson. Thank you. Director Knight. Let's take a roll call vote.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Knight, Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Oberman,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Smith,
Yes,
Director Williams. Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. And our next resolution is a resolution of the Hillsborough Transit Authority. It's number 2021-0938, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2022 annual budget of $168,681,326 and providing for an effective date. So is there a motion to adopt or amend?
Second.
Thank you very much. Motion to approve by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Myers. Let's have a roll call vote.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Oberman,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Smith,
Yes,
Director Williams. Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. So if there's no further board discussion or anything from staff, in compliance with Florida statutes, a public hearing has now been held on September 13, 2021, to consider the fiscal year 2022 tentative millage rate and the fiscal year 2022 tentative annual budget. And this concludes this public hearing. The final public hearing is scheduled for Monday, September 27, 2021, at 5:30 p.m. at the County Center Building, 601 East Kennedy Boulevard. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.